My understanding of a holistic Aboriginal perspective has developed greatly over the course of my involvement in this subject, Aboriginal education. The journey of this development of understanding has been extremely useful for myself as a future primary educator in order to ensure that I am an inclusive, responsible and culturally respectful teacher. Prior to my enrolment in this course, my understanding of Aboriginal culture and pedagogies were very limited. I did not look past the term country as anything more than a cultural place and physical space that was sacred to the Indigenous communities of that specific area. Since participating in class discussions, lecture content and conversations with educators, I have now found a new understanding of the term country. I now recognise that country is also a learning tool, something that you can learn from and learn within. Country is made up of aspects of culture that provide such rich lessons for children and adults. My understanding of teaching and learning in a classroom environment has been expanded throughout my involvement in this subject. Pedagogies that I had once been somewhat dismissive of in my planning and programming were demonstrated in group presentations weekly, whilst the implications of educational practice and benefits of these certain pedagogies were made clear. Some pedagogies specific to the 8 Ways of Learning framework were not too different to those I had previously been exposed to, such as non-verbal pedagogies, deconstruction and reconstruction, non-linear approaches, symbolism and imagery, and story sharing. Being exposed to these pedagogies again, but now through the lens of Aboriginal education perspective, allowed me to recognise that cultural education such as this should not be so daunting or overwhelming. New pedagogies that I were not previously familiar with, such as learning maps, land links and community links, were presented to me in a way that allowed me to recognise the value of them in educational teaching and learning. It is necessary to create a learning environment that is relationally responsive, that is one that responds to and relates to Indigenous culture in a holistic way. These 8 pedagogies assist teachers in doing so. The icon presentations that were completed as a part of this subject highlighted the benefits of experiential learning, listening and responding in understanding both familiar and unfamiliar cultures and how each individual person experiences this culture in their own way. As this familiarity with Indigenous culture grew, I took it upon myself to engage in further research into the history, experiences and rich cultural practices of Indigenous communities, specifically those clans in my local area, the Burragorang Valley and Camden, between the Tharawal, Darug and Gundungurra lands. In doing so, I developed such respect for the area that I live, the landscape and, in a sense, the country in which myself and my students can grow and learn from. This landscape has been demonstrated visually in this digital story. As my experience with Indigenous culture and education grew, I began to recognise artworks and symbols that tell a story in my local community, such as those found in hospitals and schools. This highlighted to me the inclusive nature of this Indigenous culture in every aspect of living and everything we do. Whilst my ability to interpret these artworks, their stories and lessons is still quite limited, I now recognise the importance of consultation with an Aboriginal elder in determining the meaning of these, as well as when passing on this information to students in my teaching practice. This is one of my greatest lessons throughout my involvement in this subject. I feel that through engagement with topics in this subject, such as how country is central to Aboriginal education, the value of identity in the learning environment, community partnerships, engaging students, and the value of Aboriginal language, I have been well equipped with the tools for engaging with Indigenous pedagogies and the incorporation of country in my teaching practice.